The Jungle of Broken Moons, HFY Sci-Fi story. The jungle of the shattered moon was silent. Except for the low hum of alien insects crawling beneath glowing plants, Rylan moved carefully between twisted trees, his boots crunching on metallic soil that shimmered like crushed glass. He was a scavenger, one of the last humans still drifting between forgotten battlefields, searching for tech, weapons, and anything worth trading. Above him, two broken moons hung in the dark red sky, cracked like ancient bones, their surfaces glowing faintly from old plasma burns. The place was a graveyard of machines and dreams, and Rylan knew better than to stay long. His visor scanned the area, displaying faint energy signals. Something was still alive out there, or at least something that could still kill. He adjusted his plasma rifle, muttering to himself. Just another quiet day in paradise. The wind shifted, carrying a distant sound, not mechanical. Not the hiss of machines, but something else. It was a scream, high and filled with fear, cutting through the fog like lightning. Rylan froze, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his heart whispered otherwise. He turned toward the sound, sprinting through the jungle, branches slapping against his armor. The screams grew clearer, desperate, and near the edge of a collapsed ridge. He saw her, an alien woman, tall and graceful even in terror, her silver skin glowing faintly under the dim light. She was cornered by massive creatures that looked like boars forged from crystal and bone, their tusks glinting with venom. Rylan didn't think. He raised his rifle and fired. Bright blue bolts slamming into the beasts. The first fell, smoking and howling, but the others turned toward him, snarling. Their eyes burned with a strange green fire as they charged. The ground shook under their weight as Rylan dove to the side, rolling behind a fallen tree. He fired again, but his weapon overheated. The barrel glowing red, one beast leaped over the trunk, jaws snapping inches from his face. He swung his damaged rifle like a club, smashing it into the creature's snout. The alien woman cried out, throwing a shard of crystal she had picked up, hitting another beast's eye. Rylan grabbed her hand, shouting, "Move!" As they ran deeper into the ruins behind them, the beasts howled, tearing through metal debris and shattered armor. They reached a broken structure half buried in vines, once a human outpost. Now just bones of steel and dust. Rylan pulled her inside, sealing the hatch behind them, his breath ragged. The woman's eyes shimmered like liquid silver, her voice soft but commanding. "Who are you?" "Rylan," he said, panting. "Just a scavenger, and you?" "I am Elira of House Varen," she said, standing tall even in fear. "My ship was shot down. My guards are dead." Her voice trembled, and Rylan could see blood trickling down her arm. He tore a strip of his sleeve and wrapped it around her wound, muttering, "You're lucky I was close outside." The jungle growled again. Rylan checked his wrist comm. Static filled the screen. No human signals nearby, only alien channels encrypted and hostile. He sighed. "We can't stay here. They'll sniff us out soon." Elira looked at him with confusion. "Why would a human help me? My people hunt yours." Rylan smirked faintly. "Old habits, I guess. Humans help those who scream loudest." For a moment she almost smiled, but the sound of claws scratching metal froze them both. Something was outside, bigger than the beasts before. Rylan turned off his light, motioning for silence. Through the cracks of the wall, a massive shadow passed. A creature 10 meters tall. With tusks like towers, its breath fogged the air, each exhale like steam from a reactor. Elira's hand trembled. Clutching his sleeve, Rylan leaned close, whispering, "Don't move, don't breathe." The ground trembled as the monster sniffed near the hatch, growling deep. Then after a long, terrifying moment, it turned away, crashing back into the jungle. Elira exhaled shakily, her voice a whisper. "It's hunting us," Rylan nodded. "Yeah. And it won't stop until one of us is dead?" He glanced at her again, noticing the faint emblem glowing on her chest plate, a royal insignia of some kind. "You said House Varen," he said quietly. "That means you're important." She hesitated, then nodded. "I am a princess of the Varen Dominion." Rylan blinked, half smiling. "Of course you are, because my life wasn't complicated enough already." Her eyes narrowed. "You mock me, human?" He shrugged. "I mock everyone, keeps me sane." She looked at him differently then, a mix of curiosity and disbelief, as if trying to understand why a human would risk his life for her. Outside, thunder rolled across the cracked sky. Rylan moved toward a damaged control panel. Trying to access power from the old base, sparks flew, but one light flickered to life, a faint beacon. Weak but still functional, he tuned it to an old human frequency, sending a distress signal into the void. Elira watched him, her voice softer now. Even if someone hears you, they won't come for me. Maybe not, Rylan replied. But they'll come for me. And that's all we need. A sudden crash shook the structure. Dust falling from above, Rylan raised his weapon. Even though it was nearly useless now, the growl outside was deafening. Echoing through the hollow metal, Elira whispered, "It found us." Rylan stood between her and the door, eyes steady. "Then let's make it regret that." The wall buckled under the impact as claws tore through steel. Bright green eyes glared through the opening. And Rylan whispered with a grin, "Welcome to the jungle. Beast, the story of the human rescuer had just begun. And under the twin moons of a dying world, a legend was about to be born. The Hunter's Signal. HFY Sci-Fi story." The roar outside grew louder. Shaking the ground like thunder trapped in metal bones, Rylan held his breath, feeling the vibration run through his boots as the monster's claws scraped against the steel hatch. Elira crouched behind him, clutching a shard of metal like a dagger, her silver eyes reflecting the faint red glow from the jungle outside. For a moment the sound stopped, then came a deep rumble. The creature sniffing the air, searching, tasting the fear that filled the ruin. Rylan leaned closer to the door, whispering, "We can't fight that thing head on, we run." She hesitated. "Run where?" "The jungle is full of them." He grinned, tired but determined. "Good thing I parked my ship nearby." He grabbed her hand and pulled her through a side tunnel, a narrow crawl space that led toward the surface. The metal walls echoed with every movement, dust falling like rain behind them. The sound of tearing steel exploded as the monster broke through the main chamber. Rylan's comm flickered with static, then a faint tone. The distress signal had gone through. He glanced at the weak display, whispering, "Come on, Emberlight. Find me." Elira didn't understand the words, but she saw the fire in his eyes, that strange human mix of hope and defiance. They reached the surface, gasping under the heavy red sky. Lightning crawled across the clouds like veins of blue fire. Rylan looked to the horizon. The dense metallic forest stretched endlessly, each tree sharp as a blade. Somewhere beyond that lay his hidden cruiser, covered in camouflage mesh and surrounded by traps. He started forward, but Elira grabbed his arm. "You will die out here, human." Rylan smiled without looking back. "Then let's make it a beautiful death." They moved fast through the forest, the air thick with the smell of ozone and decay. Small drones buzzed above, scanning for survivors, their red lenses sweeping the ground like hunting eyes. Rylan aimed his wrist blaster and fired an EMP dart. One drone fell, sparking and twitching. Elira looked impressed. "Your weapons are primitive, yet clever," Rylan chuckled. "That's humanity in one sentence." They passed through a valley of glowing vines where broken alien banners flapped in the wind. Elira paused, touching one symbol, whispering, "My people fought here," Rylan said softly. "And they lost, didn't they?" She looked away, her silence answering for her. A deep rumble echoed again. The beasts were tracking them. Rylan pulled a small sphere from his belt and threw it behind them. A flash erupted, followed by a pulse of magnetic fire that bent the air itself. The ground split open, swallowing the creatures that had been chasing them. Elira stared wide-eyed. "You carry war in your pockets," Rylan shrugged. "Old habit. Comes with being human." As they climbed a ridge, the sky shimmered with aurora-like streams of plasma. Far above, 3 alien patrol ships moved like shadows. Scanning the ground, Rylan ducked, pulling Elira into cover beneath a fallen beam. He whispered, "They're not here for you. They're here for me." Elira frowned. Why would they hunt a scavenger? He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because scavenger isn't the right word." Before she could ask, a bright beam swept across the ridge, forcing them deeper into the ruins. They found a cavern filled with ancient tech, its walls lined with symbols in both Terran and Varan language. Elira ran her fingers across one console, whispering, "This is older than my kingdom." Rylan activated his scanner, and the display blinked. Human signature detected. He stepped back, confused. That can't be right. Humans haven't been here in centuries. A faint hologram flickered to life. A woman in an old Earth uniform. Her voice distorted. "Warning, evacuation failed. Survivors relocating to hidden colonies." Then the hologram vanished. Leaving only silence and dust, Elira turned to him slowly. "You are not the first human to reach this world." Rylan's jaw tightened. No, but I might be the last. A tremor shook the cavern, and through the entrance, they saw the same monster returning, its skin glowing with green energy. Rylan cursed under his breath, pulling a detonator from his belt. He handed Elira a small metal disc. When I say run, press this and don't look back. She gripped it tightly, her voice shaking. And you? I'll be right behind you, he lied. The creature smashed through the wall, roaring loud enough to make the air vibrate. Rylan activated his last grenade. A bright flare of heat and plasma, he yelled, "Now!" And Elira ran, her eyes filled with tears as the blast lit up the cavern. The explosion echoed through the jungle, shaking the moons themselves when she turned back. All she saw was fire and smoke. Hours later, Elira reached a clearing. Collapsing under the strange silver trees, she clutched the metal disc. Suddenly it beeped once, and a voice crackled through. "Next time, princess. Trust me when I say I'm hard to kill." Her eyes widened as a figure stepped out of the shadows, covered in dust and ash. Rylan, limping but alive, holding a cracked datapad that still blinked with a weak signal. She laughed in disbelief, half crying. "You survived." He smirked. "Humans don't die easy, remember?" Overhead, lightning struck again, but this time Rylan's comm pinged with a stronger tone. A signal, faint but human. He whispered, "The ember light heard me." Elira looked up. "Your ship?" He nodded. "Our ride out of this nightmare." But then his face darkened as the comm showed multiple alien interceptors converging on their location. He holstered his weapon, glancing at her. "Ready to run again?" She smiled faintly. "With you?" "Always." The storm above began to swirl, and in the distance, a faint blue light flickered through the clouds. Rylan looked toward it, whispering, "Hold on, Emberlight. We're coming home." And together, under the broken moons and burning sky, the human and alien princess ran toward destiny, while the galaxy began to notice that humanity, once thought extinct, had just sent up a signal. The sky burns. HFY Sci-Fi story. The storm above roared like a living thing, the broken moons glowing through clouds of fire and smoke. Rylan and Elira ran through the ruins, the sky behind them painted with streaks of green plasma. Alien interceptors swept low, scanning the jungle with bright searchlights that cut through mist and ash. Each flash of light made Elira flinch, but Rylan kept his head low, counting the rhythm of their passes like a soldier who had done this too many times. "Almost there," he muttered. "Just beyond that ridge." They reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a crater. Down below lay a wide lake of mercury-like water, and in the center, half buried beneath rock and vines, was the Emberlight, a sleek, dark ship. Old Terran design, its hull scarred but proud, its nameplate barely readable. Elira stared in awe. "You called this your ship?" Rylan smiled. "She's more than a ship, she's family." But before they could descend, a voice crackled through the comm, harsh, alien, commanding. "This is Captain Vorex of the Varan Dominion. Surrender the human and the traitor princess." Elira froze, her blood running cold. "That's my uncle," she whispered. Rylan knelt beside her, scanning the horizon. 4 small crafts circled in, cutting off escape routes. He frowned. "Family reunion, huh? Always wanted to crash one of those?" She looked at him, torn between fear and guilt. "He will not show mercy, Rylan. You should leave me." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "Yeah, that's not really my style." The first blast hit the cliff, throwing them both to the ground. Rylan rolled to shield her as molten debris rained around them. He grabbed her hand and jumped, sliding down the slope through mud and sparks until they crashed near the lake's edge. The Emberlight loomed ahead like a sleeping beast waiting to wake. Rylan touched a hidden panel on his gauntlet, whispering, "Come on, girl. Open your eyes." The ship's underlights flickered to life, casting blue ripples across the water. The air filled with a deep hum, the sound of old Terran power awakening again. A barrage of plasma bolts struck nearby, shaking the ground. Rylan shoved Elira inside the loading ramp as it lowered, shouting, "Seal it!" The ramp closed with a hiss and the interior lights flared, revealing a cockpit lined with mismatched human tech and alien scraps. Elira stared in amazement. "You rebuilt this from wreckage?" "Piece by piece," he said proudly, sliding into the pilot seat. "Old war junk never dies. It just waits for a reason to fight again." Outside, the alien ships descended, their voices echoing through the comm. Final warning, surrender or be destroyed, Rylan grinned. Flipping a series of switches, that's my favorite line. The engines roared to life. Throwing dust and shards into the air, Elira braced herself as the ship lifted. Tearing free from its prison of vines, the alien cruisers opened fire. Beams of green light tore through the air, but the ember light twisted between them like a ghost. Hold on tight, Rylan shouted, and the ship shot upward through the storm. Lightning struck their hull, sending blue arcs crawling across the metal. Elira gasped as the control screens flickered. We are taking damage. Rylan gritted his teeth, and that's normal. If you're not taking damage, you're not really flying. He pulled the ship into a hard roll, weaving through plasma bolts. One enemy fighter clipped their wing and exploded in a burst of emerald flame. The explosion illuminated Rylan's determined face, eyes reflecting fire, jaw set like steel. For a brief moment, Elira saw not a scavenger but a warrior, the kind of human her people's stories had warned about. They broke through the cloud line, and the stars opened above them like a sea of diamonds. Behind them, 3 more alien fighters gave chase. Locking missiles onto their tail, Rylan slammed a lever, deploying flare drones that burst into brilliant trails of light. 2 missiles veered off and detonated, but one kept following. He cursed, persistent little thing, and dove the ship downward, letting the missile chase their shadow at the last second. He flipped the cruiser upside down and fired a single rail slug. The slug hit the missile dead center. The explosion painted the stars gold. Elira blinked in disbelief. You are insane, Rylan laughed breathlessly. That's humanity's secret weapon. The laughter faded as a shadow appeared before them. A massive Varan battleship emerging from hyperspace, its hull stretched for miles. Covered in glowing runes, Elira's heart sank. That is the Dominion flagship. Rylan's hands froze over the controls, then tightened. Good. I was worried this would be too easy. The enemy ship hailed them again, the same cold voice speaking. Princess Elira, you have shamed your bloodline. Surrender the human and return for judgment. Elira's hands trembled. If I refuse, they will destroy us both. Rylan turned to her, eyes steady. If you surrender, they'll destroy who you are. He activated the ship's main weapon systems. The console glowed red as ancient human code scrolled across the display. Weapon signature detected, Elira read softly. T-class rail driver? Rylan nodded. The last of its kind built before the fall. The ember light began to charge, the hum growing until the entire cockpit vibrated. The Dominion ship opened its hangar bays. Releasing dozens of fighters, Elira grabbed Rylan's shoulder. You can't fight them all. He smiled faintly. Watch me. The rail driver fired. A single beam of white energy cut through space like a sword. It hit the lead cruiser dead center, splitting it apart in a flash of light that blinded the stars. The shockwave shook their ship violently, alarms screaming. Elira clung to her seat, heart pounding. You destroyed a Dominion warship with one shot. Rylan exhaled slowly. Told you family never disappoints. But even as the wreckage drifted, more enemy ships appeared, their numbers overwhelming. He looked at the scanner, grim. We can't win this fight. Not yet. He reached for a lever covered in dust and one labeled Ghost Drive. Elira frowned. What is that? Rylan's eyes gleamed. Something humans were never supposed to use. He pulled the lever and the stars warped, bending and twisting as if reality itself couldn't decide where they were. The ember light vanished into the void, leaving behind only static and drifting fire. On the Dominion flagship, the alien admiral stood in shock. The human ship disappeared, he muttered. No trace, no signal. In the darkness beyond known space, Rylan's voice broke the silence. Calm and steady, welcome to the edge of nowhere. Princess? Elira looked out the window, watching the stars flicker like dying candles. Where are we? She whispered. Rylan smiled faintly. Somewhere they can't find us yet. And in that quiet place between galaxies, the legend of humanity's return had just taken its first breath. The ember light rises. HFY Sci-Fi story. The stars outside were silent, frozen in the endless dark. No comms, no beacons, no trace of civilization. Only the hum of the ship and the quiet breathing of 2 survivors drifting through forgotten space. Rylan sat in the pilot's chair, his armor burned and cracked, staring at the faint red lights on the console. The ember light was alive but wounded, its engines bleeding energy like an old warrior gasping after battle. Elira stood behind him, her silver eyes tracing the shattered screens. "You saved us," she whispered, "but at what cost?" Rylan didn't answer at first, his gaze fixed on the navigation readout. The ghost drive had thrown them light years away into uncharted void. Far beyond any known system, he finally spoke, voice low. "We bought time, that's all. Time is worth more than victory." Elira sat beside him, watching his trembling hands as he patched the circuits with pieces of wire. "You speak like a soldier," she said softly. "But you called yourself a scavenger." Rylan smiled faintly. "Old habits die hard." She leaned forward, curiosity glowing in her eyes. "What are you, Rylan?" He hesitated, then sighed. "I was part of the Terran vanguard before the fall, before Earth went dark." Her breath caught. "You mean, you fought in the Great Silence?" He nodded slowly. "We were humanity's last defenders, and when the stars turned cold, we scattered, hiding ships, storing memories, waiting for the day someone would remember what we were." Elira whispered. "And you waited alone." Rylan's voice was distant. "Someone had to." A warning tone broke the silence. Oxygen dropping fast, fuel cells damaged beyond repair. He stood tapping the console. "We need a power source or we're done." Elira opened her wrist bracer, revealing a small glowing core. "Take this, it's a royal stabilizer. It can recharge systems." Rylan frowned. "That's part of your life support," she smiled faintly. "Then breathe for both of us, human." He hesitated, then nodded, slotting the crystal into the ship's reactor. Blue light filled the chamber, soft and alive, the ember light humming with new strength. Rylan whispered, "She's awake again." Outside the viewport, the void began to shimmer, faint trails of light moving like ghosts. Elira frowned. "What is that?" Rylan checked the scanner, eyes widening. Not ghosts. Debris fields. Thousands of wrecks. They were drifting through a graveyard of ships, human and alien alike, all silent, all forgotten. Elira shivered. So many battles. So much death. Rylan's tone darkened. Not battles. Massacres. This was where humanity made its last stand. They floated through the field, the ship lights brushing over broken hulls and shattered emblems. Rylan reached out, touching the glass as an old Terran emblem passed by. "The symbol of the Vanguard," he whispered. "They said we died here, but they were wrong." Suddenly, the sensors beeped, a faint power source deep among the wrecks. Elira leaned forward. Could it be survivors? Rylan shook his head. No, something older. He guided the ember light toward the signal, engines rumbling quietly. They found it buried beneath layers of twisted metal. A massive Terran dreadnought, its hull blackened but intact. The name still visible across the side. TNS Resolute. Elira's eyes widened. "It's huge." Rylan's voice carried awe and sorrow. "The last command ship of the Vanguard lost centuries ago." He scanned for entry points. "If its reactors still hold, we can save the ember light." Elira hesitated. "And if it's not empty?" Rylan smiled grimly. "Then we meet old friends." They docked with the dreadnought and entered through a cracked airlock. Inside, the corridors were dark and filled with frost. Human banners hung in tatters and dust floated like ashes in zero gravity. Rylan walked slowly, hand brushing along the walls. "We built this to outlast eternity," Elira whispered. "It feels like a tomb." They reached the main bridge, and Rylan froze. A single body sat in the captain's chair, bones wrapped in a faded uniform. He saluted silently. "Captain Arden Vale, Vanguard Command." As they approached the console, the dreadnought's core flickered, systems coming online. A holographic projection appeared, the voice of the captain preserved in memory. "If you're hearing this, humanity has fallen," it said. "But the fire must never die. The ember light is the key, the last seed of our kind." Rylan's breath caught. "They built her as a legacy ship." Elira turned to him, realization dawning. "You weren't just flying an old cruiser. You were guarding humanity's last weapon." Rylan nodded slowly. "Not a weapon, a promise." Suddenly, the dreadnought's lights flared, sensors detecting movement. The remains of automated defense drones powered on, their targeting systems misreading Rylan and Elira as intruders. "Back to the ship," Rylan shouted, firing bursts from his rifle. Blue bolts lit the dark halls as drones descended, spinning like vultures. Elira ducked behind cover, shouting, "They're everywhere!" Rylan threw an ion grenade, the blast knocking them back into the airlock. They slammed the hatch shut and detached from the dreadnought, just as its old reactor flared violently. The explosion illuminated the void like a newborn star, the shockwave pushing the ember light clear. Elira fell into the co-pilot seat, breathing heavily. "You destroyed a relic," Rylan shook his head. "No, I freed it." He stared out at the drifting wreckage. The dead don't need monuments. They need someone to carry their fire. The ember light systems now glowed brighter, charged by the dreadnought's final surge. Elira looked at him quietly. "You are not just human, Rylan. You are what humanity was meant to be." He smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure they remember that." He pulled a lever and the engines flared blue, the ember light rising through the debris field like a phoenix made of steel. Below, the wreckage of old wars shimmered like constellations. Above, new stars waited, untouched and bright. Elira looked out at them and whispered, "Where will we go now?" Rylan answered softly, "Home, wherever humans and allies can stand together again." As the ember light broke free from the graveyard, its signal pulsed for the first time in centuries. A Terran transmission sent across the stars, one simple phrase repeating over and over, echoing through the void. Humanity endures. And far away in the cold reaches of alien space, 100 forgotten receivers came to life. Old colonies, lost fleets, wandering exiles, all turning toward that voice. The galaxy had gone quiet long ago, but now, for the first time in ages, the stars began to whisper once more. The humans have returned. Vanished into the stars. HFY Sci-Fi story. The stars ahead shimmered like ocean waves, endless and calling. The ember light drifted through the silence of deep space, its engines pulsing softly, carrying two souls bound by fate and fire inside. The hum of the ship felt almost alive now, like it remembered the blood, the battles, the purpose it had been born for. Rylan stood by the viewport, staring at the blue currents of light rippling beyond the hull, his reflection tired but defiant. Behind him, Elira moved quietly, wrapping a metallic blanket around his shoulders. "You haven't rested in 2 days," she said gently. He smiled faintly, eyes still on the stars. "Rest is for those who stop fighting." The ship's AI flickered to life, a faint female voice echoing through the speakers. "Power levels stable, propulsion at 60%, Rylan exhaled. "Good girl, keep us breathing." Elira tilted her head. "Your ship speaks?" Rylan nodded. "It learns, adapts. Humans gave our ships minds once. Because we got tired of being alone?" She touched one of the panels, whispering, "Then this one loves you." He chuckled softly. "She yells more than she loves." Silence lingered between them, the kind that carried weight and peace all at once. Elira looked out at the glowing abyss. "My people will hunt us forever, you know that." Rylan shrugged. "They can try, but the stars are wide, and ghosts are hard to catch." She smiled faintly. "You still joke? Even when we are fugitives?" He turned to her, eyes warm. "That's how humans survive, Boars. We laugh when the universe wants us silent." Suddenly, the radar beeped, faint rhythmic pulses echoing from far ahead. Rylan straightened, scanning the display. "Signal detected, origin unknown." Elira frowned. "Could it be Varen scouts?" He shook his head slowly. "No. It's Terran code." Her breath caught. "You mean—" He didn't answer, just adjusted the frequency, and a voice came through. Broken, ancient, but unmistakably human. "This is the colony ship Aurora Dawn. Repeat, requesting assistance. Coordinates." Rylan froze, heart pounding. "That ship vanished 200 years ago," he whispered. Elira touched his arm gently. "Then maybe your kind was never truly gone." He stared at the signal, emotion flickering in his eyes. If that's true, then humanity didn't fall and it scattered. The ember light shifted course, thrusters igniting, cutting across the dark like a blue comet. But as they neared the source, the sensors flared red. Massive energy spikes detected. Out of the void, 3 Dominion warships decloaked. Blocking their path, Elira gasped, "They found us!" Rylan gritted his teeth. "Then let's remind them who they're dealing with." The enemy hailed them, and a cold voice filled the cabin. "Human, surrender the princess or be destroyed." Rylan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You tried that line before, it didn't work then either." The ships opened fire, green plasma lighting the void. The ember light rolled and dove between blasts, its hull glowing with blue flame from the reactor's surge. Elira grabbed the controls beside him. Following his hand movements, her fear replaced by instinct. "Left thruster now," he shouted. 3 degrees, full boost." She obeyed, and the ship spun through the barrage, firing its rail cannons, cutting one fighter clean in half. But the Dominion's flagship fired a gravity snare, locking the ember light in place. Warning lights flashed red, the hull creaking, metal groaning like a wounded beast. Elira struggled to hold control. "We can't break free." Rylan slammed a switch, activating the ghost drive, but it only sputtered weakly. He cursed under his breath. Too much damage. The enemy prepared the final strike, a massive energy beam charging at the core of their ship. Elira looked at him, her voice trembling. It was an honor. "Rylan of Terra." He turned to her, eyes calm. "We're not done yet." He reached down, pulling out a data crystal from the console. "Take this," he said, handing it to her. "It has the coordinates to the Aurora Dawn, the last human fleet." Elira stared, confused. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're faster than me, smarter than me, and your people will listen to you when they see what humans did for you." Her voice cracked. "You're not coming with me?" Rylan smiled faintly. Someone's got to keep their attention. He locked the ship's controls and activated a manual override. Sealing her escape pod, Elira pounded the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Rylan, no." He looked at her through the window, his expression steady and warm. "Tell them the truth, Elira. Humanity never died. We just became stories waiting to wake up." The escape pod launched with a flash, vanishing into the black. Rylan turned back to the controls, gripping the pilot's handles. The Dominion's weapon fired, a beam of pure destruction, and the ember light, wounded, glorious, defiant, turned and dove straight into it, engines blazing like the heart of a sun. The explosion lit up the void, tearing across space in waves of gold and blue. For a moment, every Dominion sensor across the sector recorded one final transmission, a human voice, proud and unbroken, whispering, "For Terra, for the stars, far away." Elira's escape pod tumbled through hyperspace. The crystal clutched in her hands. The coordinates glowed softly. And through her tears she smiled, because behind her, the spark of humanity had not died. It had ignited. The ember light's final signal echoed across forgotten networks, across abandoned colonies and silent outposts, and in a dozen dark corners of the galaxy. Systems blinked awake, engines hummed, lights returned, and old Terran voices whispered to life again. "Signal received," one AI said. "The Vanguard returns, the fire burns once more," said another. And somewhere in the endless night, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if they too remembered the legend of the human who saved an alien princess and vanished into the stars, leaving behind the promise that humanity endures,